And the Romania Pro 2024 is in the books. Who did you have winning the Romania Pro?
Coach Jason Capson here.
So let's jump right into this. I did watch the morning show for the Romania Pro. I watched it live, the pro bodybuilding section, open men's bodybuilding. I had some high expectations for some bodybuilders going into this show. Obviously, Rafa was at the top of the list. Most predictions had him as the man to beat, with Akim Williams as a potential second place runner-up. I also had high expectations for Horse MD. I thought it was going to be Rafael, Akim, and Horse MD in the top three, and that they would be battling for the top spot. I thought it was going to be very, very close. As it turns out, it was a very close competition between the top two, Rafael and Akim Williams. And of course, the interwebs has exploded with all kinds of controversy. There always seems to be controversy whenever Akim Williams is in a competition and he's close to the top and doesn't win. You get the fans out basically just saying it was stolen, it was a ripoff, and what have you. I don't think it was quite a ripoff, but I think it was a lot closer than what people think. I was a little disappointed in Horse MD's conditioning. Going in, the pictures that he was showing, the updates that were showing looked really good. I thought he was going to be able to crack the top three, but as it turns out, it was Amir Omaragic, who came in from Germany, came in and took the third spot in this show. First place went to Rafa, second place went to Akim, third went to Amir, and fourth went to Horse MD. Now, the latest updates from all of these competitors, well, most of them, is that Rafa is not going to be competing in Prague. He's got his qualification for the Mr. Olympia for next year. Akim is not going to be going to Prague, at least that's what he has said. So this was probably his last show of the year, although that isn't confirmed completely. We just know that he's not going to Prague. Horse MD is competing in Prague, and hopefully he brings better conditioning next week at that competition. But let's jump right in to the comparisons, pose versus pose, between the champion, Rafael Brandao, and runner-up, Akim the Beast Williams. Let's start front double biceps pose. And I've said this in past videos, and I'll say it again. Akim Williams has some of the greatest biceps in men's open bodybuilding right now. They could be the best arms in all of bodybuilding. His front double biceps pose is actually incredible. I think if you look at these two together, the first thing that stands out, at least for me, is Rafael just has an incredible structure. His structure, it's old school. It goes back, in my opinion, to the 90s. The 90s, in my opinion, was the greatest era for men's bodybuilding, where you had a combination of size and symmetry and proportions and conditioning, and then all hell broke loose. But I think we're going back to that. At least it looks that way when you consider the Mr. Olympia, and now you look at the Romania Pro. I think Rafael won this show just because of his structure. I think if we look at this pose in particular, and yes, it is a front double biceps pose, and I think Akim has better arms for sure. I think their midsections look very good. You know, Rafa does, have that vacuum pose or semi-vacuum pose. Akim doesn't. Rafa's got the great shoulder to waist ratio. Akim's isn't quite as good. But I think, when you look at it from the bottom up and you look at their legs, Rafa does have great separation in his legs. I think Akim, his legs are crazy. I think he really brought up his conditioning. I think this was his best look ever. I think he really brought a complete package. I think that his legs are at least on par with Rafa's. I think Akim has more cross striations in his quads than Rafa does. Rafa has deeper separation and a better X frame, they call it. I guess a better symmetry. But if we're going by the open bodybuilding criteria, and you look at the thickness of Akim's chest and his lats and those incredible biceps and arms and the legs, I give this pose, front double biceps pose, to Akim. If we go to the front lat spread, this is where it gets a little bit interesting because, again, Rafa has better separations in his legs than Akim. Akim has those cross striations, especially in that teardrop area. His legs look good. They look better than they have. I think Rafa has a better front lat spread than Akim. When you just, again, look at the X factor, you look at the X frame, you look at his shoulder to waist ratio, the taper. I think Akim has very, very high lats. His lats, the insertions are very, very high, where Rafael's are lower, so it just gives the appearance of a wider back. I think this pose does go to Rafael. You can see his abs a little bit better. Akim struggled with his abs in this pose. I think it's close, but I do give this one to Rafael. Now, that's one pose to one. Turn to the side. You cannot help but see this is, I don't know if there's anyone that's got a better side chest pose just strictly from the legs. If we're just looking at the legs, Akim has some of the best legs in all of bodybuilding from the side. They're sick, crazy looking legs from the side. Now, I think he wins the legs here in the side chest pose, but if we go further up, and if you look at the two of them, you look at their serratus, you look at their obliques, you can see that Rafael has better obliques than Akim, at least in this pose. You can see it better. I don't know if Akim is just not posing it properly. Their cross striations in their chest. I think Akim has a thicker chest. I think Akim is thicker overall. He's a bigger guy. And his legs are definitely better. But I think, again, just from a structure standpoint, pleasing to the eye, I'd give this a tie because I think Rafa has a better upper body in this pose, at least the way it's being presented. And I think Akim has a better lower body in this pose, the way that it's being presented. So I'm going to give this a tie. If I had to give it to one, I think I would give it to Akim just because of that leg. His legs are crazy. Then we go to the side triceps pose. Again, when you look at Rafa's obliques, you look at his serratus, you look at his abs, it's just tighter. It looks good. Akim kind of hunches forward with this pose, which there's a lot of, it's a flexibility issue, and a lot of, giant bodybuilders don't quite get that stretch or that full. Their flexibility just isn't there. And you can kind of see this in this pose. Rafa just looks more comfortable, looks more pleasing to the eye. Again, Akim's leg blows Rafa's out of the water. I think their triceps are both, they're equal, they're on par. I just think that Rafa looks better in this pose, but I think Akim's leg is way better. And if I'm going just strictly based on the criteria for open men's bodybuilding, man, I think I'd give this one to Akim too. Just, again, that it's hard to ignore his leg. It's really hard to ignore his legs from the side. He really does have a great side leg in both the side chest and the side triceps pose. And I wish he could get a little more stretch. I wish he could get his tricep pose to lean back just a little bit more, like Rafa's looks more relaxed. It could just be the way that he's doing it, and I think he just needs a little work on that pose. But I think I would give this one to Akim. You tell me in the comments below, as always, who wins this pose? Who wins all these poses? Who do you think won this competition based on what you're seeing on the net, based on what you're seeing? I know some of these pictures aren't the most clear pictures. I know there's probably better ones that are going to be coming out soon. I pulled these from the live video that I watched and from some of the other places online, but I think it does give a clear picture that Akim's legs are sick, and I think I would just give this pose to Akim. Man, it's close. Back double biceps pose. This is where it gets really interesting. I think if you look at Akim's hamstrings and his glutes, they are definitely tighter. Again, in the lower body, I think Akim wins this. Akim does have really high lat inserts, and I think that's where a lot of people kind of get ahead of him in the back double biceps pose. His biceps are, again, really, really good. But I think overall, the back development, when you look at Rafa's back and you look at the lower lats, the lower inserts, and you look at just the definition of his lower back, Akim's carrying a little bit of water in his lower back. Not enough to really concern ourselves with. I think it's very close, but I do have to give this pose, when you look at the shoulders, when you look at the back, when you look at the glutes, hamstrings, all of it, I think I have to give this pretty easily to Rafael in the back double biceps pose. Because remember, in the back double biceps pose, it's not just about the back. Or it's not just about the biceps, I should say. It's about the back, it's about the biceps, shoulders, it's about everything. The shoulder to waist ratio, the glutes, the tie-ins, the hamstrings, the calves, all of it. And I do think head to toe overall, Rafael wins this pose. Next up, we got the back lat spread. Again, I don't know what it is about Akim's back. He just seems to have a very long lower back. It's interesting when you see him do these poses. It's a strange, he's got a very unique looking lower back, and then those really, really high lats. But again, I think if you're just looking shoulder to waist ratio, Rafael does win this pose. When you look at, hamstrings, again, lower body, I think Akim wins the hamstring conditioning comparison, but I think Rafa does enough in this pose again to beat Akim. Akim, again, that lower back's got some folds there from some water, maybe a little tiny bit of fat, not much fat on his body, but a little bit of folds, a little bit more than Rafa. And Rafa's conditioning was on point, and his overall structure and symmetry just seems to be better overall than Akim. Again, I'm not a big fan of how Akim is doing this pose, and he did this at both the morning and the night show. He kind of leans to one side when he's doing this. Looks a little awkward. It just doesn't look all that comfortable when he's doing these poses. He turns his head too with his back lat spread. Again, everyone does it a little bit different. I just think he needs to work on some of these poses to bring out his incredible physique just a little bit better. I don't think it was, what people are saying, that it was a rip-off. I don't think anybody could say that Rafael blew Akim out of the water. I think it was a very, very close competition. But if we, again, go pose by pose, you can see how Rafael definitely won the show. Next up, we get the abs and thigh pose. First thing you notice right out of the gate is Akim's cross striations in his legs. Rafael's legs have come up so dramatically in the last year. It's hard not to, give him props for that. But I think, both have great abs. Both have, serratus. I think, again, just from a pleasing to the eye structure, symmetry, balance standpoint, you have to give this to Rafa. I think Akim's legs look really, really good in this pose, but I think, Rafael's legs look great as well. Great separation, great balance, great structure in his legs. He's got a tiny waist with incredibly tight abs and serratus and obliques. I just think this pose overall, just the way the pose is being done, I think you have to give the abs and thigh to Rafa. Now, last but not least, we've got the most muscular. I know Akim does the crab as well in his, when he's doing his most muscular, he goes from the hand-on-hand shoulder one to the crab one, but this is the one that gives them, obviously, the comparison for both. Again, if you look at this pose between the two of them when they're both doing the same pose, I think hands down Rafa wins this pose quite easily. I think his legs look better. I think the separation of his legs is hard to ignore. Again, that shoulder to waist ratio, that taper, I think both their abs are good, both their chests are good. I think Akim is definitely thicker, but Rafa definitely has brought some quality size to his physique over the last year. This is interesting because if you remember back in the Mr. Olympia, you had Akim finishing 10th and you had Rafa finishing 8th. And I think based on the Romania Pro, I still see, the difference between the two of them. I don't think Akim did enough to win this show. I think Rafa pose versus pose did enough to win the Romania Pro and earn his Mr. Olympia card, win his invitation to the Mr. Olympia. next year in 2025. And I think, if Rafa keeps improving year over year the way he did from the year before to last year, I think we're in for a really good. I think it's going to be amazing. I think he's going to look incredible. Rafael has incredible structure and has brought up his legs significantly, and I think he is a future top 3 Mr. Olympia. Akim has some work to do. His structure is a little unfortunate when it comes to those crazy high lats. I think he's got, again, the best biceps in all of bodybuilding. But I think this, again, those of you that are, online screaming and stomping and saying that Akim got ripped off, I don't think he got ripped off. I think it was close. I think, you could have had, how Akim probably had 2, maybe 3 poses versus Rafael winning all the other poses. And again, even the ones that Akim won, they were pretty close. I think Akim won the side poses, maybe. Even that's debatable. But I think Rafael definitely did enough to win this show, even though Akim's a little bit bigger. Rafael certainly didn't, it wasn't a blowout with regards to size. Rafael brought a lot of size and a beautiful structure, great separation, great symmetry, and overall, in my opinion, after watching the Romania Pro morning show and the night show, I think Rafael definitely won this show. So we will see what happens next week in Prague. Are you watching the Prague Pro? Are you going to be checking to see if Chris Bumstead upsets some of the greatest professional open bodybuilders in the world on stage next week? Certainly going to be interesting. I will be tuning in and, of course, doing a full pose versus pose after that show. That's it. That's all. Coach Jason Capson signing out.